Welcome back to the Sportsball Podcast. I am your host, Andy, with my co-hosts, Nate and Zach, your source for sports, back for another edition of All Things Sports, and football's back. I'm all the way back in on football, and no particular reason at all of what happened Sunday. Don't even look at why I might be super confident and happy. Just know that I am back in, and football is back.
Not at all potentially a rash decision, but you know what?
No, absolutely not. Why would we ever do that?
We're sports fans. We don't make rash decisions on anything.
Speaking of rash decisions, we'll get into the college football section of what happened today in terms of the NIL world and making rash decisions. But before we even get into that, little baseball talk. Here's the playoffs draw closer, starting next Tuesday, I believe. That our Google genius brains looked up to verify that we were actually smart and said the right things on here. Unless I am now misspeaking and everything is completely wrong.
It's baseball. Give it like a day, and that could be the case.
It could be the case.
As soon as this releases, we're going to be like, wow, we look kind of dumb.
Or smart.
Would just like to point out we're recording this on a Wednesday, and this will come out probably 2 days later. So if whatever we say changes, that's not our fault.
That ain't on us.
That is entirely based on what we're looking at right now. Not our fault.
And what I'm looking at right now is the White Sox are still refusing to lose that one special game that they need to make MLB modern day history.
I like how you start it with, we're starting with playoffs, and then following up with the White Sox. We've confirmed months ago that they aren't making it. I don't think we needed to rehash that discussion.
No, there's still a chance. They could win these next 5 games and make us all sad because then they'll be good again. No, they won't.
That'd make Minnesota Twins fans happy because we'd have a chance to make the wild card.
That is true. Speaking of teams that have clinched, Guardians and Yankees have both clinched the playoff spots. The Yankees haven't quite clinched the division yet. If they take out the Orioles tonight, which I don't think they are in the lead at the current moment. No,
they own 8-3 at the moment.
Yeah, so the Orioles still technically need to win out and the Yankees to lose out for them to have a shot at the AL East, but odds are probably likely that the Yankees will eventually probably capture that up. But both the Yankees and Orioles are in the playoffs. Guardians have clinched the division, and the wild card for that spot between the AL Central teams is quite the doozy of what happened. The Tigers seemingly came out of nowhere and decided, hey, we're going to start playing good baseball again and contend for this spot. While the Royals started to slip after they looked pretty convincing to either take the division or get that last wild card spot. Along with the Twins also kind of slipping and doing the same thing that the Royals have also done, is nobody really wants that wild card spot between the rest of the AL Central teams.
Just like a hot potato. Here, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it.
And the Tigers are like, okay, we'll take this. Sure.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit at the beginning, I remember, before we started recording, about how just like, where'd they come from? It was like, what?
Really, just came out of nowhere.
It's kind of been fun to watch where all of a sudden you're like, oh, like Detroit is moving up. They're moving up. And then you're just like, oh. So, yeah.
And the Red Sox, I think we decided have a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs still. They have to win out.
0.6%, I just saw my ESPN.
6, so we're going up, baby. So. They have to win out, and other things have to happen in terms of the teams in front of them that all include the Mariners, Twins, Royals, and the Tigers. Conveniently, if they all lose, that would be great. But I don't think that'll happen.
Is that what you mean when you say certain things have to happen? Just everybody has to lose?
Yes, those would be the certain things that have to happen. And then the Astros locked up their division. I don't really care about them because they're cheaters, so they don't deserve anything good in their lives ever again. But
you remember at the beginning, this goes to like why we should definitely have like a freezing cold take section at like the beginning of a season. Do you remember when they were on like I think they were like 2-10 or something like that? We were like, oh, maybe the Astros are going to suck this year. Like, getting their pennants.
They did not.
Remember that? Freezing cold take. So
that was a freezing cold take. The Phillies, after the Braves got dismantled halfway through the season with injuries, locked up their division tonight. Same with the Brewers. Well, the Brewers have already been locked for quite some time, man. To no surprise, the Dodgers, yet again, also locked up their division.
They're still.
The Padres could take the division too, but both the Padres and the Dodgers are in the playoffs. Like I said, I always want the Dodgers to get in because I want Kershaw to pitch and then inevitably like give up 7 runs in an inning like he always does. And it's fantastic to see playoff Kershaw show up because he'll be MVP the entire year and then he'll get to the playoffs and then just absolutely choke every single time.
It's just tragic that they don't have Yu Darvish anymore.
I know. They just have the other only great MLB player right now. And what Shohei has done this season, I mean, we all knew he was MVP, but to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season is quite a feat, considering Shohei is not a small dude by any means.
While also recovering from Tommy John surgery, right?
Yeah. Well,
Jimmy John's.
He's got, I mean, he's not as fast as Ichiro was, but he's got pretty good speed, and the dude is like massive, which is why he can hit so many home runs. But like, you would think a guy that tall, like David Ortiz size, would be like, oh, he's not a fast runner, but like, no, Shohei's pretty fast on the bases. So I think he's the first player to ever do it, or might be the first one in quite some time to do it, to do 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a season. So he's, I mean, we kind of knew as the season went on, there wasn't really going to be anybody else contending for the NL MVP other than Shohei. With that AL MVP, I don't know. There's just, I'm guessing Judge, just based on how good the Yankees are doing, or somebody off the Orioles, but I don't follow anybody else that closely. That's not like my team. I couldn't tell you a single player on the Guardians besides maybe Jose Ramirez, which I think he's still on the Guardians. Oh, well, maybe 2 then. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Major League Baseball. Just a lot more chaos in the AL wild card than the NL wild card at this rate. I mean, the next, besides the Braves, the next closest team in the NL wild card is the Cardinals at 6.5 games back.
I think they're officially eliminated too. Like,
yeah,
that's so. Yeah,
and like the AL teams, you have the Royals and the Orioles who are like games up. Then you have Detroit, and then the Twins are 2 back, Mariners are 2 back, Red Sox are 3.5 back. So a lot can still happen. Obviously, probably not for the Red Sox. They're a little bit more at a disadvantage, but everybody else, I mean, there's still 5 games left, and there's a lot of chaos that can still happen before the end of the season come Sunday. So outside of cheering for the White Sox to be the worst team ever, that's my rooting interest. None of you guys have any more wild baseball takes?
Yeah, that's not much of a playoff take, but
It's not really.
just gonna say, I mean, you know, but no, I don't have anything else really.
I don't want the Yankees to win. I mean, but that's a given.
Yeah, we're teetering towards the Dodgers Yankees World Series, and I'm not excited about
I
it.
don't want that. I don't want the teams that pay the most money and get away with all the loopholes that be in the World Series, because that's what it's looking like. Yeah.
Cool.
On to the pigskin.
Which one?
Well, probably NFL.
Okay, NFL it is.
Good one.
Well, depends on who you ask. We don't need to talk about the last Thursday night game. Nothing really happened. It
What?
was a sicko game to begin with the teams that did play. But then
Patriots? Tell me that wasn't
no,
top tier entertainment.
No, not at all. Not even for a second was that top tier entertainment. But before we get to our teams, the Ravens Cowboys was, I couldn't tell you which way that game was going to go when it started, because I was like, the Cowboys defense is not good, as we found out, are still not good. And the way they had been recently playing, I'm like, man, the Ravens might just roll in and stop them. But then the Ravens had also lost to the Raiders. So which Ravens team was going to show up? And the beginning of that game, up until like the end of the third quarter, it's like, oh, this is like a really dominant Ravens team that we're used to seeing. And then they just kind of took their foot off the gas and started to let the Cowboys kind of slowly ease back into the game. And the Cowboys, I think, did recover the first onside of the year. I did see that. Unless somebody else has recovered an onside before that I don't remember. But
I think that's correct.
yeah,
I think I remember seeing that.
They had the first successful onside this year. Still wasn't enough. The Cowboys still blew it. It was
darn.
Really, yeah, shucks, right? Really funny to see Dak and CD kind of yell at each other. I mean, I'm not happy about it because CD is my guy for fantasy. So I need good things to happen with that. And I don't like when the starting quarterback is yelling at his receiver and vice versa. But
yeah, but they can argue a little bit more like this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you and I play each other in fantasy. So if they can just get it to where like maybe he gets like 0.5 points or something, kind of like my running back did last week.
I would cry.
I tell you what, I'm hoping for a miracle because I'm not doing so hot this year.
No,
I only want it to happen because that would mean that Danny Dimes is going to outplay Dak Prescott. I would be very excited to see
that's
that
the first night game this week is Cowboys and Giants, which I couldn't tell you how that one's going to go because the Giants beat the Browns. So like, are the Giants kind of good or the Browns?
The Browns are the only team the Cowboys have beat. So
I know.
And technically, I was going to say by technicality of just how like standings work, the Dallas Cowboys are last in the NFC East right now, which is saying something because they've got the Giants and then the Eagles, which tell you what, I know Andy said he was in on after his game. Now, actually, he said it was unbiased. Never mind. He's back in on the NFL. I, for one, am comfortably on top of the fence. So,
never a doubt, never a worry.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I still exist in this plane of the NFL's okay, and then the next week it's like, I think I'll quit watching this.
Right. And then sicko game number 1 between the Bears and Colts. If you like your quarterbacks throwing interceptions, was that the game for you to watch? Because I think both Richardson and Caleb both threw 2 interceptions each, at least. Bears still didn't win a game on offense. I don't know if the Bears are just kind of like going to put it together or if the Colts are bad, but also kind of put it together. I couldn't really tell you what to make of each of those teams.
I think the easiest answer to at least the Bears is that it turns out maybe, and this is not criticism of Caleb Williams, much like I've wanted to give, but maybe drafting a quarterback before you had your O-line fully set up maybe wasn't the best idea. Don't get me wrong, Caleb Williams can certainly grow into that role, but I think in order to make him become a better quarterback than throwing 4 interceptions a game, weird, I think he might need to get an offensive line that helps him. And he's not going to be able to do that because he's not the owner or the GM or anything like that. So I'm hoping, you got to assume he's pleading for like, hey guys, can you give me some people that block?
Right.
I will say though, he's making good use of Cole Kmet. So
yes,
I mean, he's doing okay minus the interceptions.
Yeah. Minus the interceptions. Nate, what I will proffer to you is for cycle game number 2, is Bryce Young bad at football?
There's nothing definitive yet, but there are murmurs on the street that
because
there's a possibility.
Because supposedly all the Panthers probably in theory needed to do was not play Bryce Young to maybe be good at football.
Or to at least maybe look competent,
right?
And you can't even use like the Raiders are bad because they just beat the Ravens last week. And I don't know.
What's even crazier is that there was an article that came out that the Panthers front office is not really like looking into any trade offers for Bryce Young, and I'm sitting here thinking, why? Like, if nothing else, get yourself some draft capital because there is a chance Bryce Young could go be a better quarterback somewhere else with a different team.
Mm-hmm.
and also they can get some help for the rest of the Panthers team.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe
Far be
their
it
hope
from
is
me to
that
say I know how to
he
run a
figures
team,
it
but
out a
just
little
saying.
bit later on the season,
Right.
and you get a better return for him. But I mean, he's on. Yeah, you're probably on his. Got the contract on the books for what 4 years usually
Mm-hmm.
on the rookie contract. So
Yeah.
Did he sign an extension or anything?
Well, I think it's just the rookie contract still.
That's what
Yeah.
I mean. Like he hasn't extended his
No.
contract with him or anything.
No.
So I mean,
Not
I don't
that
know.
I've
I
heard,
don't
at least.
exactly know how all the contracts work, but you got to assume there's got to be some kind of clause in there. Like
You would think, maybe.
it does make for a nice setup next week with Andy Dalton returning or getting to play against the Bengals.
yeah,
And
revenge game. And there's another team that looks like they're slipping away.
Yeah, they're a little lost.
Now, to be fair, the commies were just on fire, and like I understand, like
another game like that the rest of the year.
I was gonna say, like there is a legitimate chance that the commies may still play well, but that's one of those games like you see once a year where it's like, okay,
Like
that
everything was
their
perfection.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the
what
defense, but
what
I
did
think there's probably a case of Jade Daniels is already better than Bryce Young.
maybe, yeah.
in that same realm though, I think the Washington Commanders actually have an offensive line that's a little better too.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, the Panthers kind of fit into that same mold as the Bears, where it's like, hey, they got a really good quarterback potentially,
Right,
and maybe they should have got some other pieces in front of them.
right.
But again, I don't run a front. I don't run.
The Bengals are just such a weird team to try to dissect right now. I don't.
Mhm.
I mean, they're 0-3, but they haven't looked like Panthers 0-3. Well, I guess they're better than. They're worse than the Panthers. The Panthers won, but like they haven't looked like they haven't scored like 3. Yeah, or Jacksonville. Like they haven't scored 3 or 10 points. I mean, they've been putting up points every game. It's just obviously their defense has just not been good enough to sustain other offenses from scoring.
It's crazy that they're 0-3 with a point differential of 12. Like they haven't lost big. In fact, I think a couple games where there was, what was it? They lost to a point or lost by a point to the Chiefs. Or was it 2? Doesn't matter.
It's just a point because it was a walk-off field goal. Yeah.
It's like, it just feels like, I don't know. It's tough because they're such a hard, like you said, they're a hard team to read where they always have started slow under Zach Taylor, especially since getting Joe Burrow. It's like it takes them a couple games to get into their mold, which is fine. But starting 0-3 makes it seem like that's just going to be impossible for them to do anything.
Right. And obviously, teams that start like 0-2, 0-3, trying to make the playoffs, I mean, your percentage just drops significantly. And especially in the division where the Steelers kind of 3-0. I mean, they have relied heavily on their defense to win the games, which has always been Mike Tomlin's MO. But I mean, the Steelers look good right now, despite not having a very potent offense. But I mean, they're relying on their defense to win them games, and it's working. So that division is now suddenly the Steelers and Ravens, and then everybody else. So that's. I mean, that division to begin with is never easy to get out of with the caliber of teams that are in there. But when the Bengals are supposed to be one of those high caliber teams, is now suddenly dead last and looking up. It's not going to be an easy road, and you haven't played any of your division opponents yet. So
that actually does remind me, based on the round maybe the embrace debate part of our NFL discussion today. Worst team in the NFL after week 3. Because we all thought going into week 3 we would have said, oh, it's easily the Panthers. Like they probably
still might be the Panthers. I think the Dolphins or Jags are probably going to make a case for it.
I was going to go Jags.
Jags
definitely
look
lost.
And the Dolphins in having not having to significantly hurts them a lot, but like it really showed against the Seahawks. And Seattle's good too. Don't get me wrong. But Seattle's not like lights out Bills good where they're putting up 47. I mean, they have a mid offense and a caliber good defense that just keeps them in games, and it's just enough to win them. But again, a lot of the what Seattle did was just the Dolphins not being good on offense anymore because you don't have a quarterback.
I saw a suggestion that the Dolphins should just go like 2008 and just run straight up Wildcat for the rest of the season. Get the ball to Tyreek.
Yeah, it's even if Tua is clear to come back at some point, I don't know if like it's even wise to try not back out there anymore. And unless you can try to sign a veteran quarterback here in the next week or two, it might be a wash year and you just start playing for a draft pick for a quarterback next year. Because I think Quinn Ewers is going to be in the draft next year. I think. I haven't looked that far ahead yet. Either way, to your point there, Zach, yeah, I think the Jags or Dolphins are vying for that spot with the Panthers. I still think the Panthers are bad, and we'll see if it's just a one-game fluke or if it might be a consistent. Because unless you're the Chiefs...
Red Rifle's back, baby.
Yeah. Like, unless you're the Chiefs or the Bills apparently now, or any of the other 2 or 3 top caliber teams, the NFL is truly a week-to-week league. I mean, you're never going to know. Like, I certainly did not see Denver coming out and, like, curb stomping, essentially, Tampa. After Tampa looked really good in week 1 and 2. Like, I thought if Denver was going to win that game, it'd be, like, a high-scoring shootout, not a defensive mastermind to shut the entire Bucs weaponized offense down. But... It's a week-to-week league, and unless you're one of the top teams, that you don't know what you're going to get. And the Panthers certainly might come out next week and score 3 points again.
That's what I mean. Is like I don't know. It seems like at least on paper, well, maybe not on paper, but like the Jaguars just looked lost. And I'm not saying the Bills are necessarily like they were two levels of teams. So this is going to sound weird, but like in my head, I was like the Bills are good. I didn't think they were quite great. They looked like
they looked great up, Monday.
They looked like they looked like a team that could have beat the Chiefs.
And I had said this when the season started, that I thought, because they kind of did the similar thing with Denver's, they started selling their capital to get cap space. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a rebuilding year with young guys.
Yes, exactly.
They come out like a wagon and just have certainly blown a lot of people's doors open. Now, granted, this is kind of what Buffalo has always done since Josh Allen got theirs. They will get through the season and win the division, and then they'll get to the playoffs and meet the Chiefs and lose. So until they pass over that hump, it's going to be hard to say that, this is going to be their year until we actually see them do it.
And besides, it's our years for Cowboys. So
I don't think it's the Cowboys' year anymore. Their defense looks miserable.
It hasn't been the Cowboys' year for like
go Mike Zimmer.
So
yeah, sorry. 3 games in, I'm going to say Dan Quinn was still a better defensive coordinator than Mike Zimmer.
Dan Quinn's not doing too bad, and even though the commies don't necessarily, they looked great on Monday. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be great, but they certainly looked like at least a competent football team on Monday.
Right. And then, of course, we have to talk about the 49ers blowing the game to the Rams.
Darn. I'd say you hate to see it, but you don't.
You don't, but the 49ers were squarely in position to win that game handedly, and they blew it.
And I'm sure there's some 49ers fans out there like, well, yeah, if we had Debo and Christian McCaffrey's like, but you don't. And they should have
McCaffrey in Germany.
On paper, they should have. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey might be dead. Like, not dead, but like he's a good running back when he's healthy, obviously. But like, man, the fact he's going to Germany to get this thing looked at just tells me, who's not a doctor, that it's probably worse than what they thought. At least in my head.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Late Jordan Mason pickup is looking fantastic.
It is. And anybody with Juwan Jennings, congrats to you on your.
That's also me.
Your one good week. We'll see if it's consistent, but good week to have Juwan Jennings if you had him. So
yeah, and now I think I saw Brock Purdy. They were reporting like back soreness or something, or some back issue. He was on the injury report for. So
back injury.
They might just literally
carrying the damn
apart.
team.
I think Trey Lance is their backup. I think they traded Dallas for him.
No, he's with Dallas.
Oh no, that was the other way around. Other way around. Oh God.
Might be like
their backup
CJ Beathard or something.
Oh, let's see here real quick.
Let's find out.
Brandon Allen and
Joshua Dobbs.
Wow.
Oh no, they might be done.
The Pastronaut.
They might be done.
Woof.
Oh, but before we talk about our teams, the hot take that I'm going to throw out there is,
Oh, we're good at these. We know where. I can only imagine where this is going.
I don't think the Chiefs' offense is that good. I
Not a
think
hot
their
take.
defense is bailing them out.
I think there might have been a missed pass interference at the end of the game against the Falcons.
The one against the
Might
Falcons
have.
was more egregious than the one that was called against the Bengals. And I know, like, a lot of people are like, that's minimal contact. The defender still got to the receiver before the ball got there against the Bengals. Now, the one that wasn't called on Sunday absolutely was.
Homie didn't even turn his head.
Didn't turn around.
Didn't even think about it. Wasn't not a thought that went through his brain.
And yes, the Falcons making that stupid fourth down decision also played into their hands. But I think the Chiefs defense has bailed them out.
Play call too.
Yeah, it was
God.
fourth and inches.
Fourth and inches outside pitch.
Like
Fourth and inches,
fucking
and
middle.
you also have not just Bijan Robinson, but you also have Algier. I can't remember his first name. It's like
Yeah.
those dudes have been. It's
Put like Kyle Pitts at fullback.
Yeah, somebody.
Go.
fourth and inches. Like I get it. Don't use immobile Kirk. I get it,
Mhm.
and he's looked a lot better since week 1. Sure,
Right.
but like you don't want to sneak him, but like you gotta have something better than that.
Right.
And I say this is a guy that cheers for the team that has the tush push that didn't even use it in their game.
Yeah, that was bad. But I mean, if you look at the Chiefs games, they didn't get bailed out. I mean, they won by an inch against the Ravens. They won on the last second field goal to the Bengals, who again, jury's still out on the Bengals, and then their defense bailed them out on Sunday against the Falcons when we know what the Chiefs can do on offense. And I don't know if Travis Kelce being absolute garbage this year has contributed to that, or if teams are playing Travis Kelce tighter, that leaves Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy more open to make them be playmakers. But their offense hasn't looked like the Chiefs' offense we have seen the past couple years either.
I saw a statistic.
And like even
that-
last year, like their defense was better last year, or was as good last year as they were this year too. So
Yeah.
a lot of last year was also because of their defense, because their offense was not spectacular by any means last year either.
Yeah, and I saw a stat to that point where Pat Mahomes is like average, like when they took all the passes that he's done in the first 3 weeks, the average yard per toss or whatever it is, it has gone down. Like his first year or first starting full season was like 9.1 per
Mhm.
pass, and then it's just gone down and down every year. So it sounds like down to like 5.4.
Mm-hmm.
So every pass he's throwing is really averaging out to be like 5 yards, which isn't bad. I mean, it's working. They're doing a lot more dink and dunk, but that's not like, 2 years ago, that's not a Pat Mahomes thing. Pat Mahomes
Right.
would have been hero ball sidearming it 40 yards down the field.
Right.
He
And I
still
know
tries to do that, but they
Yeah.
don't catch it.
And I know not having Pacheco probably hurts the run game, but like Andy Reid has proven time and time again he can plug anybody into his offense and they'll be a shining star.
Kareem Hunt's back.
Yeah.
Well, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is supposed to be back too, I think,
Yeah,
this week or
next
next
week, I
week.
think.
So
And he was a guy that like I was excited
here's a
about coming
guy.
into college. Yes, thanks, Chris.
you're welcome.
He has not lived up to what he was at LSU with Joe Burrow. But that's beside the point. But I mean that they're still winning games, so I'm sure Chiefs fans are not that mad about it. I certainly wouldn't be mad about it either, because you don't apologize for wins in the NFL. But I'm interested to see how their offense continues to go, because I know what their defense is, and anything under Spagnuolo is going to be fantastic defense, because that's just who Spags is as a coordinator. But I think their offense is more boom or bust right now, in the sense of, because they have, Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy are fast receivers, but unless you can get them in playmaking space, they're not really like I mean, they kind of are a dink and dunk offense, but it's still, they just haven't looked as good as the offense did a couple of years ago or anything like that. And I guess if you go on to keep relying on your defense, you can to win them games. But I mean, you look at what the Bills did Monday night. I mean, that's certainly what I would imagine the Chiefs offense to still be like, is you sling it out and you get big plays, you make fantastic, receivers are open, the offense looks amazing. And the Chiefs just haven't looked like that yet. Now, whether they do as the season goes on, obviously the jury's still out, but that's my hot take on them. And
I think if you're gonna hot take
knows?
that, I think if you're gonna take it from that game, I think the hot take to me would be that the Falcons might actually be more real than people are giving them credit for.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the Falcons have played 3 really, really good games. So, 2 really good games. And the problem is like, it looks like they're bad just because if you look straight up just at the score sheet, they're 1-2, I think.
Yeah, and they've played 2 out of the 3 best defenses right now in terms of the
Kirk
Steelers.
Cousins
And
effect.
I mean, the Falcons, they started off with the Steelers, Eagles, and Chiefs, which is a gauntlet of teams to start your season with.
Yeah.
And the Steelers are, I think, the best defense besides the Vikings in the league right now. And the Chiefs are probably top 5 too. I don't know about the Eagles, Zach, but I mean, they're certainly not a slouch on defense either. But I mean, the Falcons have had a gauntlet of defenses to start the year.
The Falcons played the Eagles just really, really well, though.
Yeah.
Too. Like the Eagles looked lost. And then thankfully against the Saints.
1-score games, which reminds you of anybody?
Oh, yeah. Don't remind me. Don't remind me.
But Scott Frost is on the Rams, who won a 1-score game.
That's not legal.
You got to feel, he's probably got to feel a little like vindicated at that point. Just like, see, I can do it.
And what's really funny is like the possession that set up that field goal was that punt return that netted like a 40-50 yard gain for the Rams. So I was like, cool.
All credit to Sean McVay. That's how it's going to be.
Not the other guy.
Nope. All credit to Sean McVay. Scott, if you're listening.
Yes. But yeah, we'll throw it before I've done a little too much talking at the NFL before I talk about my team. So we'll throw it to you, Zach, on thank you for getting Saquon out of the Giants. My fantasy team really appreciates your team right now.
You know what? To your point from earlier where you're like, I'm back in on the NFL. I am also back in. I know I said I'm comfortably on the fence, straight up in the middle because it's hard. It's so weird because the Eagles are 2-1 and it feels like we should definitely be 1-2 because that Saints game at first I thought was going to be a shootout. So I guess the good news is that Vic Fangio took all the comments from all the fans and stuff. And I'm not your traditional Philly fan. I'm not going to throw batteries at Santa or anything like that. I like Santa. I don't want to pelt him with a D battery. But to the point, I don't think Philly fans are quiet when it comes to their criticisms. And so I think Vic Fangio took that criticism well, and he definitely got the defense playing a lot better than it looked last week. So that was nice. But yeah, offense still remains kind of a question mark in my opinion. They did enough to win. And as much as I have liked Jalen Hurts since he started being the starter for the Eagles and all of the whole Wentz drama and everything got down, it is one of those where I think he looks good a lot of times, but not great like he did in the Super Bowl run. He almost looks like he tries to play too much hero ball. Either way, offense just seems still like a bit of a big question mark when it shouldn't be. I mean, I know that like the Eagles don't have A.J. Brown, and I guess going forward we might not have Devontae Smith. I guess that was the big kicker I took from the game is that the Eagles played hard, but the Saints played. There were a couple plays that were a little dirty, like the one on Devontae Smith that took him out with the concussion. That one with his helmet popped off.
Never the Saints.
Yeah, weird, right?
They don't have a history of that.
No. Bountygate didn't happen. But
Looking
that
at
one,
you, Andy.
Whoa, just because my current head coach has associations with that team in that particular time doesn't mean it's happening now.
but there's nothing saying that it's not happening now. So
Well, if it is happening, they're doing a really bad job about it.
yeah. So yeah, I guess the long and short is defense showed up, offense still. The thing is, they look good enough to win the game, but then they do stupid things. Or, I mean, in the dirty plays, the other one was Darius Slay getting pushed 47 yards out of bounds. And then I don't remember if they called a flag on that one. I think they finally did, but on the other one, it was kind of similar to like Adrian Martinez against Michigan, where forward progress had definitely been stopped, and then they just didn't blow the whistle. And it's like, okay. And then they were trying to make a football play. Devontae's helmet came off, and then someone else hit him. It's like come on. Like, this should have been blown dead 2 seconds ago. And 2 seconds is a long time in the NFL because everything's moving so fast. Regardless, it was fine. I'm not fully sold yet, but, it is also just week 3. Maybe now they've got a couple wins under their belt. They've gutted out a couple tough losses. Oh, I guess the only other questionable thing is some of the play calling. In a tight defensive battle, you need to kick field goals and take the points when you can. And Nick Sirianni just decided, nah. And then he decided to shove Jake Elliott in there for a 60-yard field goal. And, I don't blame him for missing that because, give him the chip shots to begin with, let him warm up his leg. Whatever. Yeah, it's one of those games where, we won, but I didn't feel like a true win. It felt like a team, the Saints looked a lot better last week. The Saints looked like they should have won, and they didn't. I don't know. It was one of those where now I'm just see how this week goes. Nate, I'll give it to you because your team actually did things.
So what is the consensus over here from the peanut gallery on whether the Vikings are a team or not?
I will say the only not sarcastic compliment I will give you is
starting off hot with that.
You mean I get one?
Yes.
Maybe 2 if you're nice.
Save it for the rest of the
you're
season.
a good
boy. What your guys' defense did to the Texans was not anywhere imaginable what I thought that game was going to go. I truly thought that was going to be which quarterback is going to have the ball last kind of game. Mm-hmm. And that's just because what we had talked about last week is the Texans have so many weapons that they can spread the ball around, and you have to guard Nico and Stephon and Tank. And, I know Joe Mixon's one is in the game, but Cam Akers wasn't a slouch before, maybe not still, but, and then you have CJ Stroud, and then the Vikings just said, bet. And you did not make that a close competitive game in the slightest. Yeah. And that was the most surprising part. And I think it's going to be really telling of how the Texans will come out next week. Are they going to let that, is the playbook out now on how to beat the Texans, or is just a one fluke game type thing? And then from the Vikings aspect, yeah, it's, I'm just really impressed by your defense. And having Aaron Jones being a steady workhorse to take the load off of Sam Darnold has helped a lot too. Mm-hmm. Not that you guys didn't have that with Dalvin Cook for Kirk either. It's like a different dynamic though between Kirk and Dalvin, and then Sam and Aaron. And I can't quite pick up on it. Yeah, I can't.
Weird. It's like I said before. It turns out when you have an offensive line, it works. Like I said, weird.
The Sam and Kirk are 2 wonder white bread quarterbacks, and Dalvin and Aaron are both bruising hard rose running backs. Mm-hmm. And so from that aspect, they're not different, but they're both different at the same time of how they're playing. So it's been super impressive, and the fact that the Vikings are still doing this without Addison shocks me.
Hawkinson.
And Hawkinson. And just getting those guys back eventually is just going to make it more of the lethal offense once they're back to full strength. Obviously, when they both come back, especially Hawkinson, I mean, they're not going to just throw him right back in. I mean, that's a long injury to recover from, and you don't want to, rip it again, going immediately 0 to 100. It was quite impressive of a game, and not even something that I remotely saw on the horizon of how that game was going to go.
Well, from the other peanut in the gallery, being me, I kind of share the same sentiments. Not that I thought the Vikings would suck, but when JJ McCarthy went out with the injury, I was like, dang, that is kind of a blow. And I know, like in our Twitter chat or whatever, I was like, man, when do Vikings fans get to, not feel cursed? And I guess I know it's only after 3 weeks now, which is kind of the other thing, which I'm going to get to my point as I walk through this. But it seems like now, as of right now, you guys are doing that. Like Sam Darnold looks like he's playing just lights out. Like you said, you have an offensive line. Your offense is just entirely playing lights out, and that's without a couple of your key pieces. Defense is playing really well. My only thing is, and this isn't just a Vikings thing either, is when does the bottom fall out? Because it's the NFL. And so it's either you guys are going to, not you specifically, but, the Vikings are going to ride it and they're going to play really well, probably drop a couple here and there because that happens. But, how they respond on those is how they continue to build on that progress. Or does Sam Darnold have one of his famous games where he throws 3 or 4 interceptions and all of a sudden it just everything's come out? And again, that's not just a Viking specific thing. That's the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to that point, look at the 49ers. I'm not saying they're spiraling, but half their offensive weapons are hurt. It's just, from week to week, and being that there's only 17 games before you start going towards the playoffs, it doesn't take long for things to start spiraling. The Vikings don't look like they're going to spiral, but you never know. And the thing is they got, in this case, Aaron Jones has his revenge game this week. So I don't know if I'd call it a revenge game. I don't think he necessarily left on bad terms, but it's not similar like the Andy Dalton back with the Bengals thing, but regardless.
Yeah, they look good.
Sorry.
I think that's exactly the worry, I guess, or the pressure point, if of any, that is most glaring, is just if Sam Darnold can keep it up, because he has looked really well through the first 3 weeks. I think he's only had like maybe 1 or 2 turnovers, and I mean, he only had 181 yards this last game, but 4 touchdowns on 17 of 28. And I think I was saying during the offseason that the Vikings have a lot of playmakers. We just need to get the ball to them. So we don't necessarily need a Patrick Mahomes or like the flashiest of the flashy quarterbacks. We just need, kind of like Nebraska, some competent quarterback play to get the ball to the guys that can do the things, and they're doing that. And Sam Darnold is, I think, a little more agile than Kirk Cousins, but overall similar type profile. And we have an offensive line, and the defense is, I think, going to be spooky for a lot of teams this season.
Right.
I told you guys that Brian Flores, I think, is a madman.
He is.
So far has been.
He's kind of like Dan Campbell without making the actual comments of biting people's kneecaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. He strikes me as the type of person that's actually saying that, just not to the press. You know what I mean?
Right. And I just looked up who the Texans play next, and it's the Jaguars. So we might not actually learn anything next week about the Texans either. So
Texans score 70 points next week.
I don't know, man, because there was a thing that came out after, I think it was yesterday, where Doug Peterson even went on record and said that some things are going to have to change, and he's potentially looking at quarterback change, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
man. And then the Bills and Texans play in 2 weeks. Oh, dang. That's going to be a good game. But the Sunday night game that week is Cowboys Steelers. Gross. Oh no.
I want to know, like, when the NFL is scheduling these games, so like Thursday night, Monday night, these games that either are uneventful or awful, or outside of the one that you randomly get that's just like amazing. Like, do they not look at these teams and be like, oh, this is what we should do here? And I get it. Like, you can't really predict these things, but it's
right.
like, dang, you look at the schedule sometimes after like 4 or 5 weeks, and you're like,
But-
man, the rest of Thursday night football is going to suck.
That not next week, but the week after is the one I'm looking at, where the games that week are like Texans, Bills, Ravens, Bengals, which also could be another. Now, what we know now probably would not have been a good game, but at the start of the season, you're like, there's a chance both those teams might be one loss or undefeated by the time that week comes around. But they do give us the Cowboys and Steelers as a Sunday night game. Ugh, gross. Could have been the Bears and Panthers, so I guess we could be thankful for that.
See, but I'd rather watch that because that would be one of those incredible games because there's going to be entertainment in there. You just know that there's going to be something
This
ridiculous
Sunday night's game is Bills Ravens, and that is probably going to be a banger.
Well, so since we're so
In
good
theory.
at these, we've given it 3 weeks. Who do we think are actual, like, just list a couple, like Super Bowl contenders as of right now?
Chiefs, given.
Bills.
Bills until they choke in the playoffs like they always do. So
that was going to be my hot take because I think actually the Bills pull it off this year. As of right now,
I obviously will never cheer for them if they play the Chiefs, or no, I'll never cheer for the Chiefs if they play the Bills. But
I was like, what?
Sorry, backwards. But I'm at the point where like I've seen the sample size already, and they haven't been able to do it. So until they actually do it, like I'm just gonna keep picking the Chiefs until they actually do it. But
I don't know why we discuss it anyway when the script is already written for the Chiefs.
You're right.
Repeat.
You're right. And then the NFC side, I mean, it's obviously hard not to pick the Vikings right now. As much as I know Nate does not want to believe that hype, but of all the NFC teams right now, I mean, the Seahawks are also technically 3-0, but they haven't. I mean, they've just been average. Even they played Denver.
Played anybody, Paul?
I mean, it was only a 1-score game against Denver, so it's not like they blew Denver out of the water either. It's just kind of they've just been quietly subtle in the middle of being average, but also undefeated. Steelers could be a sneaky pick. It's just, can they rely on their defense for the rest of the season versus
how long does Justin Fields stay?
Right, and that's
Similar kind of to Vikings.
Can you last 14 more games relying on your defense with mild offense in terms of scoring 10 to 20 points a game, which is kind of what they're doing right now? Can you rely on that long? So the Steelers might be a sneaky pick, but it might break at some point where the defense starts to get worn out. And it's kind of like last year with Nebraska. Is you can only rely on your defense so much until the dam finally breaks, and then things start to pour over when you don't have an offense. And the Steelers have an offense. That's what I'll say about it. They just have an offense.
I don't know. And offense is one of those things too, where like I think once they start to gel, because Justin Fields being a new quarterback, who they probably practice more with Russell Wilson until he got hurt, it's like there is a different rhythm there. There is a legitimacy to saying that they could figure it out. It's just slow rolling, and the fact that they're getting wins is probably enough of that to like spur them to do it quicker. You know what I mean? Like, I think there is a chance they could figure something out, whether it's with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson comes back, which has also been something I've been wondering is like, I don't know, again, the contract part of things, but like, what if
I don't think you sit Fields even when Russell comes back. I mean,
well, no, he's playing well enough.
Fields hasn't done anything worthy of being benched right now.
I'm kind of surprised but it is also, I mean, Mike Tomlin is not a stupid coach, but sometimes in the NFL, it's the amount of people that are like, oh, hey, you know how most of us are like, keep it simple, stupid kind of thing? It seems like NFL coaches just like take that concept and throw it out because they just don't do that. Not that I think Mike Tomlin would necessarily do that, but he could. I am kind of surprised. And again, this goes to the contract thing. I have no idea. I'm kind of surprised like the Dolphins haven't tried to pick Russell Wilson up for when he
Awesome.
is not hurt.
Right. I've also seen like rumors that I mean there's no validity to any of this, but like, Zach Wilson being Denver's emergency third starting QB right now, third on the depth chart, that like the Dolphins might try to buy something for a trade, just to get something in their quarterback room. So
could you imagine a Zach Wilson redemption arc with the Miami Dolphins?
Him and Mike McDaniel would be something to watch. Anybody with Mike McDaniel in general, but
and not only that, going with Zach Wilson's history of hanging out with mothers is how we'll put it. Keeping it clean here. In Florida?
In Florida?
That'd be a bold move. I mean, you know what? Do it. Let's throw some chaos in there.
Who cares?
Why not? Let's just throw some chaos out there. I want to see it. It'd be amazing.
I guess another. Maybe we'll see how the Texans do, and the Ravens might have finally found their footing again, and we'll see how they kind of do over the next couple of weeks. Again, as long as they don't take the lead and then just kind of let off the gas and let other teams come back to the game, because they easily could have curb stomped the Cowboys, but they just kind of didn't at the same time. So I don't really know either what the Ravens might do going forward. But it's kind of hard to, like, even with Joe Burrow, it's just like, it's hard to count them out because we know what they can do and what they can be. It's just, can they do it enough by themselves week in and week out to kind of get them over to the winning side of things if their defense can't win them the games. So, I mean, and we've known this for like the past 3 or 4 years, just the AFC offensive quarterback rooms is just far superior than the NFC at this moment. Because the NFC, besides the Vikings, I don't really have another good pick on the NFC side right now. I don't know who.
Let's go.
I mean, clearly I'm biased, but if the Eagles get AJ Brown back,
Eagles are obviously there.
And I mean, if they can get their offensive woes that they've had in the last 3 games figured out and get them to a minimum,
right,
they can be a dangerous team, but they haven't looked like it yet.
Right.
And
we all thought the 49ers beforehand, but now obviously with everything that's happened with them, you can't really count on them to do anything anymore. So it's like, who would you absolutely trust at this moment in the NFC? And right now, it's probably your guys' teams right now, just because we don't really know with anybody else what we're going to get from the NFC side.
I mean, I could see Seattle doing something crazy.
Seattle,
they've got a good.
I did obviously think, New Orleans and Tampa, but based on what our teams did to them, Zach, it's like, okay, that's like a wake-up call to the Saints and Bucks. Because we thought they looked like absolute wagons in week 1 and 2, and then they come into week 3 and just do nothing on offense.
That's kind of the other thing too, is that now teams are starting for maybe not so much in the Vikings case, because the Vikings so far have looked unstoppable, but like in the case of New Orleans and Tampa, and probably Washington in that case too, it's like there's tape out there on how to beat them, but how much of that is just that week, those first few weeks of getting the rust off and getting used to playing again full time and whatever. And that's that's the worst thing, is like you can't really take too much until about, I don't know, week 4 or 5 before you really have a good picture of what a team is. And even then, give it another 2 weeks after week 5 or 6 or whatever, and you're just like, oh, the team completely changed because they made an adjustment and that worked better. So I don't know.
And I mean, that's the same with Denver, because the difference between week 2 and week 3 for Denver was like, if you watch their offense in week 2, was how it was similar to like Russell's first year in Denver, where they were taking they were breaking the huddle with 7 seconds left. And Sean Payton has obviously not been known to have like a simplified offense. It's been like long play calls, kind of overcomplicated. And in last week, I mean, you could see that Bo wasn't breaking the huddle till like 10 seconds, or he was looking over the sideline again saying like, repeat that, I didn't quite get it. And then you go into week 3 and they're breaking the huddle with, 20 seconds left. They're letting Bo sling it. I mean, it just looked like Sean was like, all right, what we were trying to do is, too much for you right now. Let's try to simplify this for a rookie quarterback. And then they just went into Tampa and they just let Bo sling it, and good things happen. And they just kind of let Bo do what Bo Nix does. And is that just throw the football, improvise? He broke a lot of good runs when he went through his progressions, didn't see anybody open. Then he took off and had, 15, 20-yard gains when he ran the ball. So it's definitely a week-to-week thing. And Denver certainly changed how they ran their offense between week 2 and week 3. And I'm hoping that's the case going forward still, is that, if you're going to make it easy for a rookie quarterback, try not to complicate things too much. And I know Cam Taylor-Britt came out with that quote against, what Jaden Daniels and the commies. It's like, yeah,
that did not age well.
No, they didn't age well at all. But it's like you're running a college offense, for a college guy. Sometimes that's what you have to do with these rookie quarterbacks is don't give them something new. Try to play to their style, play what they have been doing and have been working with. And that's kind of what Denver did against Tampa on Sunday. Is Bo looked just more natural in the pocket. I mean, it helps when you don't give up a sack the entire game. And Denver had 7 sacks on Baker the entire game. So it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Denver got to Baker a lot, and Bo didn't get sacked once on Sunday. So it's a huge difference when you're calling play calls. You're not letting, even if there's a long developing route, Bo was still having enough time to kind of make a decision. And if he wasn't, you were calling quick, short play passes for Bo to get the ball out in time, not hold on to the ball too much. So it was definitely refreshing. It certainly surprised me because I just thought, if Denver can't just simplify the offense for Bo, it's going to be a long year. And Bo didn't make a mistake. He didn't have a turnover. I mean, he still threw a couple passes that probably could have been picked off, but he still doesn't have a throwing touchdown. So who knows when that'll actually happen? But he has 2 rushing touchdowns. So who would have thunk that one?
You don't apologize for wins, Andy.
We don't apologize for wins. And Denver might the offense looked better. They still might have to rely on their defense a little bit like they did on Sunday to win them games. And that certainly did help. But yeah, it was pleasantly surprising that they went into Tampa and won in the way that they did against a team that I thought Tampa was probably going to put up 24 to 30 points at least. Just because when you have Godwin and Mike Evans and Rashid White and Bucky Irving, is kind of breaking the mold as a rookie running back now. He looked really good against us. So I'm glad we got that out of the way early because he's probably going to be, he looked like a really good running back. So hopefully he gets a lot more touches because I'm biased because he's on my fantasy team on my taxi squad. So no big deal. I'm just big brain over here, but
you're thinking ahead. You're 2 steps ahead of everybody.
2 steps ahead, but
love it.
That's why I'm all back in on football because the offense was actually fun to watch on Sunday again. So I'm hoping that Sean Payton keeps doing what he does and we finally get our revenge game against old Nathaniel Hackett this Sunday now.
Revenge games.
And maybe pop another Achilles in the process for a certain quarterback. Who knows?
We don't hear.
I didn't say who. I just said a certain
cheer for injuries at all, though.
Oh, man.
Although, speaking of, if a certain Mahomes-like figure in Kansas City did get injured, I just saw that their backup quarterback is Carson Wentz. So.
Hell yeah.
Remember when I said let's
cheer
introduce
for injuries,
chaos?
but if he wanted to get turf toe and take the year off like Taylor Martinez.
So here's there's a throwback. So it's not really it's not that long ago, but it's still enough. It's long enough ago to throwback. But yeah, that could also be a revenge tour for Carson Wentz, though. I don't know if we want that. It hasn't really worked at the other places, but with the Chiefs, there's a chance.
There's a chance. Zach, how did you like your time with Carson Wentz?
The first couple years were great. Although technically, if I'm being
WP or was that more Carson's?
Well, I was gonna say, if we're gonna be honest, Carson Wentz is the guy that got us to the playoffs as well as he did, and
then you got Big Dick Nick,
and then old Nicholas Foles, who retired as an Eagle.
That's not his name.
2 weeks ago. hey, family friendly show.
Even though I already said the name.
I'll bleep it out later.
Okay.
I won't. I'm a lazy editor. I'll just put the explicit tag on it. Do not listen. Anyway, no, he was great. But yeah,
listen. Don't listen to him.
Sir Nicholas Foles, otherwise known as BDN, brought home the glory, and there's a reason, which is so weird because they ended up putting a statue of the Philly play call out in front of the stadium in Philadelphia, and those guys are no longer here or there. So, like, cool.
No, it was a really cool play, though.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's switch over to the collegiate side of things, and
Big sad.
For what, NIU losing? Because I'm sad about that.
Yes, that was the only loss that affected me last weekend.
You're right, Nate. Nothing else absolutely happened.
Yeah, I may have blocked out some of what happened, which is weird because I feel like I missed everything that happened on Friday night. Like I got done working and then all of a sudden it was just Saturday. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was like, what? That was weird.
Odd.
In terms of the overall college world, not too many upsets. I mean, the Colorado game was actually wild to watch. That Baylor blew that, and then the way that Colorado did win with the Hail Mary that the overtime win was insane. Again, I know I told you guys this hot take, and I know a lot of Nebraska fans are not going to love to hear this, but Colorado being good is better for Nebraska at this moment. And that's just in the context of this season. Because the way that Nebraska kicked their butts and then the way that Colorado is still winning does make Nebraska look better. Now, obviously, this will all be negated depending on how Nebraska does the rest of the season. But at the current moment, it does make Nebraska look better. That we manhandle Colorado and that they're still winning these games despite everything else. But that happened. FSU sadly won their first game. So
yeah.
We don't get justice for the guy that promised to do some things that he has not come through on yet. We're still going to call him out for it. I don't think that's ever going to die until it actually happens. But they did win the first game, sadly.
I don't know. One can hope. But then there's also this sick part of me that's like, if he actually does it to try and break the curse and then it just doesn't work.
Or
like that's almost funnier.
That would be great.
And we get to say that. We all get to say that because we're Nebraska fans. We've been cursed for forever. So, the fact that even though Friday, which I guess there was supposed to be a Nebraska game that played, I don't remember any of it. But what I'm saying is, allegedly, if Nebraska may have lost that game, and if they may have lost in a kind of an embarrassing fashion, allegedly, in theory. Even then, there is still something to be said for maybe the curse has been passed off from us, but we'll see. A lot of season left for determine that.
Yes. Other games that happened, Tennessee still looks really good. I know they didn't win that much against Oklahoma, but game was like never really in doubt for Tennessee. I know it was only like 22-15 or something like that. But...
My hot take is that the SEC is going to be between Texas and Tennessee.
Yeah, and certainly with this weekend with Georgia and Alabama playing, it'll really test to see who is obviously better between those teams. But that is going to be quite the matchup. This will be Alabama's first technically big game with post Nick Saban era. And I know you can look at the Wisconsin game as like their first real game, but it's like, but it's
no, I don't think you can.
Big game. No, you can't.
I don't think you can. And I'm not saying that to disparage Wisconsin, fans, but like, come on.
And yeah, we'll see if Georgia is still the wagon that they are, or does Jalen Milroe finally get over the hump and beat Georgia this time? So that is obviously good. I think that is the primetime game this weekend. There are a couple other good games, but that's like the marquee matchup this weekend with that one. What else? Oh yeah, Missouri barely escaped Vandy, and I know we're all Vanderbilt fans, so it was a really hard game to accept that they lost.
Who? No one expects the Vanderbilt Inquisition, to be honest. I mean, come on.
Why would you expect that?
When I looked at my phone and I saw that Vanderbilt was tied with Missouri, I was like, yeah, that's what I expected.
Yes, the number 6 team in the
Actually,
nation to be tied with Vanderbilt in overtime.
Let me rephrase that. Vanderbilt tied with Missouri, as
You're right.
God intended.
That is expected. Yes, you're right.
That is right.
But I think the most jarring thing was James Madison in North Carolina.
Wagon of the week.
That
James
was
Madison.
a game. If you loved North Carolina turning the ball over at least 5 times, that was the game for you. And James Madison had a 50 burger by halftime. Insane. That's like putting Madden on and putting it on rookie mode and just getting your frustration out.
I'm just very glad that we have gotten to a point where defense is incredibly optional in the college football game, because that game proved that.
Yes.
And the thing is like JMU, like, yeah, they definitely had to let up on the gas because I'm pretty sure they could have scored 100 without a question. And they were just like, nah, maybe we shouldn't. Like,
right.
I think that was their play call, was just like, nah, go out there and run a hook and ladder, see what happens. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if they did. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I was kind of on and off, but it was just like, it was kind of similar to how the Bills played against the Jaguars, where it's just everything worked. And I mean, it 100% proves that football is not strictly a momentum game, but definitely momentum helps.
Right. And then, game that I wanted to talk about. Not the game. Before I get to that point, Michigan. Yeah, the Michigan USC game.
That one was a little surprising.
Yeah, I certainly thought USC was going to win that game, and Michigan gave them the old "Welcome to the Big Ten" game, where Michigan came back in the last minute or so to take the lead and then beat USC in the Big House. So that was very interesting.
Michigan was 7 of 12 passing for 32 yards. Also, by the way,
yeah. And they won.
Big Ten, baby.
So that certainly is not a welcome to the Big Ten type of game. I don't know what else is for USC.
USC's quarterback was 28 of 51 for 283 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Holy smokes.
And they lost.
Well, hold on. If your real welcome to the Big Ten moment is when you either get a team or you yourself have to punt like 8 times. So
that
how
will
many
be a
punts
game.
happen in the game? And I'm talking specifically for one team.
USC had 7, Michigan had 8.
Yeah, talk to me in November when USC comes to a cold, snowy Big. Who would they play? Oh, they play. No, that's at home.
Nebraska in November.
Well, yeah, but that's at USC though.
I was gonna say I didn't think that was
at UCLA. That could be cold.
No, they don't really. I mean, Minnesota. They go to Minnesota maybe? October 5th, but that's like
Notre Dame at the end of
Notre Dame.
November 50-50. It is. Yeah, sorry.
I don't know if I consider
Maryland would be October 19th. That might be their coldest game because they have Rutgers at home. They go to Washington, but like East Coast Washington. Yeah, so
as opposed to West Coast Washington.
Sorry, yes, West Coast Washington. There technically is an East Coast Washington. There's just a DC after it.
Yeah, they call that a district. I don't even think. Do they have this is how stupid I am right now. Do they have a college team in DC? I know they've obviously got. They've got.
Well,
they've got like Villanova and Temple and Maryland, right?
Yeah, so they don't actually have teams.
I think George Washington is a university there. University of District of Columbia. I don't know. Either way. Yeah, they're like their actual coldest, quote unquote, coldest road game in the Big Ten will be maybe October 19th in Maryland. Maybe. Outside of that, they don't really have one of those like going to Minnesota in the middle of November type games or Wisconsin.
Cool. Glad the Big Ten did them some favors. Awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. What about Oregon? Does Oregon have that type of schedule?
I was looking up.
Has to play Oregon.
I was looking up UCLA's too. Just at
Oregon has to go to Purdue October 18th. That might be sneaky.
That one could be good.
Oh no, they go to Wisconsin November 16th. All right. Hopefully there's snow that game.
Ooh, this is not necessarily in the same excitement category, but UCLA plays at Iowa November 8th.
Hell yeah.
That one could be fun.
Give me a punt fest.
That one could very well be one of those that's, I think UCLA has already been indoctrinated into the Big Ten at this point, but
Washington and Penn State November 9th too could be
hell yeah.
Give
me all the cold Big Ten games, baby. That's what you join this conference for, not for high scoring offense.
That's right.
You come from running the ball and punts.
Mm-hmm. says the team that had a 31-24 game last Friday. I don't know if I call that high scoring, but it definitely. Well, yeah, I guess
compared to last year, it was high scoring.
Allegedly.
Allegedly better than last year.
Actually, and this is kind of a spoiler leading into the Nebraska section for us, but I don't think any of us actually had on our bingo card our offense being the wagon through that game compared to how it's been in the past 5 years. So
we'll get to that in a second. The last thing I do want to mention is the news that happened today. The UNLV quarterback, Matt, whatever his last name is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Yeah, Suka, something like that. Decided to today take his red shirt and quote unquote retire or quit the team for the season for UNLV because certain commitments that were made to him were not fulfilled yet. So if you know, college football has that red shirt rule where you can play up to 4 games and still keep your red shirt for the year and not waste a year of eligibility. So he took his red shirt today because certain financial commitments were not promised and made to him yet at UNLV, which is just saying that he was promised NIL money that was not delivered yet. Turns out through the reporting that's been done today that he was verbally promised, which is the very key word here, verbally promised $100,000 for his playing at UNLV. Now, that is completely on his agent and his parents and everybody involved around him, that none of what was promised was ever written down, binded in a contract anywhere through a third-party source or anything like that, which is kind of the whole point we're getting to now is this going to be the first case domino effect that we see NIL kids going forward? Is if you are promised your financial commitments within the first 4 weeks of the season of your games, are we going to see kids kind of just redshirt, go into the portal, or just sit out the year because they weren't getting certain commitments made to them? It can kind of go both ways, whether you blame the kid, his agent, parents, or you blame UNLV or the third-party source through UNLV for whatever their NIL situation is. But it also might push the NCAA to kind of further push the agenda of we need to create some sort of contract scholarship type system so that there are rail guards in place to keep this from happening. Because as we talked about earlier, there's really no legislative oversight governing body type person, committee, whatever you want to call it, that oversees NIL right now. It's just a bunch of these third parties giving money to athletes, and that's it. There's nobody legislating any of this or governing it.
It sucks that I'm even going to say this, but as the example, this is the example of it's UNLV. So I could 100% see the NCAA just being nah, whatever. You know what I mean? Where this is a perfect example of maybe this is where we start seeing some safeguards and stuff put around it. But you need almost somebody that's I don't want this to happen, but you need someone almost like Dylan at Nebraska. That's just nope, I wasn't promised what I was getting. And I think Nebraska's got a better setup and allows for these things. They put things in contracts and stuff like that. But, I mean, you almost need somebody that's a marketable team or quarterback or whatever, I think, in order for the NCAA to take action. So as much as I would really, really like this to do it, and I hope I'm wrong, I don't see UNLV's quarterback being the one to move the needle for the NCAA.
No.
Because they're probably going to be there was nothing put in writing. That's on you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's been the key in this reports and stories that I've seen today is it was all verbally, and it wasn't even by the head coach. It was by an assistant coach, which is a no-no in recruitment violations because as an assistant coach, you can't be the one saying that. it can only be the head coach. So that's also another red flag in the story of what may or may not be going on either. But you're right. Nothing might happen of it either, but at least I think it's the first instance that has happened since NIL has come about of this type of thing happening. And there might be other instances that we just haven't heard about on a national level. And certainly we haven't heard anything from a local level at our end either, but it might be the first start of a domino effect. It might not be either. But I think the talk now will be kind of going forward is, okay, if this is going to keep happening, what are we going to do about it? Like, is there going to be something put in place to prevent this from happening going forward for student athletes coming in? And if they aren't promised what they're offered or what they've been offered to accept to come to these colleges, then, are there ways for them to get what they want, or are they, allowed to transfer mid-season or something wonky like that? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas, but it'll be interesting to see what comes of, his story itself and if anything else comes of it afterwards. Because it's still, a begging question of how NIL is going to be governed going forward, because I don't foresee this kind of loose system going on for many, many years without the NCAA trying to profit off of it somehow, because they will want to eventually. But
didn't something come out not too long ago that oh yeah, the NCAA said that they are also going to start doing payments to players. So I feel like that was maybe, I don't know if that was the domino, but that's another key point that is something that's going to be put into the pot, if you will, to stir, to be like, hey, maybe we should kind of figure all this stuff out. And I've still, the worst part is that now, knowing the NCAA and how they work, they're going to try to put their fingers in far too many things. And so the actual point of NIL and schools and donors and stuff using their money to help pay these kids is either going to get heavily NCAA taxed or something stupid to the point where it's like, well, this kind of defeated the purpose. But
right,
I don't know. You've got a lot of discourse around people who are like, kids shouldn't, or college kids that are just there to play sports shouldn't be getting paid millions of dollars. And weirdly enough, I would agree with that, because that doesn't really set them up for success if they don't go anywhere beyond, they're probably going to blow all their money on stupid stuff. I would have done the same thing if I did that, if I had that in college. I know I would have, but it's just, I don't know. NIL is such a weird thing. I think it's great to have, but I think it needs a lot of work.
Right. All right. All right. Nothing else happened, so I think we can. All
right. Well, that was the Sportsball Podcast. No,
nothing happened Friday, allegedly.
Yeah, like I said, I know for me it was got done working at 5:30, and then all of a sudden I just blacked out. I was sober, but I blacked out, and then all of a sudden it was just Sunday. I was like, whoa.
Whoa, what happened here?
And it was very nice. I was able to wake up Saturday and be like, wow, I'm really jolly today. Nothing can bring me down.
Unless we want to talk about what did happen Friday.
I guess we have.
I know.
I don't know.
Something of a collegiate sport level in Lincoln, Nebraska happened, allegedly.
On a Friday? Are you sure?
Yeah, I know it sounds absolutely crazy for me to even say that, but it did happen. Yes, Nebraska did drop its first game of the year, 24-31 to the Fighting Birds of Old Illinois in overtime. I'm really just going to call every team the Fighting something. It's just what that second word is going to be going forward. Last week it was the Fighting Panthers, and now it's this. Obviously, Illinois was the Fighting Birds. So
I think the best thing is that they are the Fighting Illini, but
yeah,
we'll only refer to them as the Birds.
The Fighting Birds.
I just, like Bert's face when he's focusing, okay, I need to make plays with this thing. That's what the logo is in Illini colors. It's just that it's that background of his face.
It just does happen to work because they are the Fighting Illini. So Fighting Birds just works.
I'm just saying, we're not the most business-minded people, but I'm telling you, we need to be in charge of coming up with these mascots and stuff. Because man, could you imagine?
We could certainly find one that's better than Scary Purdue Pete. So, which we'll get to that in a second because we will be facing his nightmarish face this week. But yes, Nebraska, that's what we had talked about last week is the way that they were going to win this game was competent offense and competent defense, and only one of those showed up on Friday.
And it might not be the one you'd think.
Yes. You have a 50-50 shot at getting it right, and you're probably still going to be wrong about which one showed up.
Special teams.
You're definitely wrong about that one. We have that could be its own separate podcast if we want to dive into that one. It's just never kick the ball.
No.
But the good news is we now know that we have 4 downs every drive.
Yeah, and that's...
Nebraska needs like their version of the tush push, just because. I mean, granted, it wouldn't help on 4th and 8 or anything like that, but point still stands.
4th and 32.
Like and I know what I talked about the key for this last week was this was an Illini team that had seen Tony White's offense the year ago with Luke Altmaier, who had seen us before, with 2 really good receivers that balled out, and it kind of opens up the game plan of how to beat Nebraska going forward. We kind of saw it a little bit with Northern Iowa, and we certainly saw it with Illinois, is the way to beat our pass rush defense is play action and quick passes. And that's kind of all Illinois did. And they eventually wore us down with that. And then you got to the 3rd and 4th quarter, and they just pounded the ball. And that eventually just kind of wore the defense out over and over again. And that was you usually... The old school mind of running an offense is you run the ball to set up the pass, where Illinois passed the ball to set up the run. And that certainly worked in the second half for Illinois. Is they got just kind of, as the game went on, they just got more and more running yards every single time. And then especially in that overtime game, the first play of overtime, there was a 21-yard rush. Just the defense just was completely just faltered by then. And credit to Illinois. They were clearly the more physical team going into that game, and they proved it all game. Definitely on the defensive side. Offense, we did have our moments on offense until kind of the last drive, and the last couple drives, really. But they were the more physical team in that game, and that's Big Ten play, is whoever the more physical team is going to win the game. And Illinois certainly proved it, and I think that's just going to be, there's a lot of spin zones we can take out of this. I think the biggest one for me is you get the loss now. And yes, it is a loss that hurts because it was certainly a game that Nebraska could have won and maybe should have won at the same time. They certainly had their chances on, it might have been their first drive out of halftime where you're up 17-10 and Dylan completes like the 30-yard pass to Isaiah. And then you're okay. If we score here, you go up 2 games and you're suddenly stepping on the throat of Illinois. And then Nebraska goes 3 and out the next 3 plays after that. And then Illinois comes down and scores. And then certainly, we can talk about special teams is you have a chance to go ahead with 2 minutes left and you miss the field goal. And the play before that is the one that Dylan just misses the throw to go up by a touchdown with 2 minutes left. So by no means is it all on the defense, because Nebraska certainly had their chances to win that game on offense and special teams. But at the same time, your defense, and kind of what we saw last year in those close games, is the defense was good enough to keep you in the games, but when the drives that mattered and counted, they weren't good enough in those moments either. And it certainly showed itself. And, when Illinois was driving on offense to win the game in overtime, they certainly just were better. On both offense and defense in overtime. Nebraska's offense in overtime was putrid. I don't think I've ever seen an offensive play end up on your side of the field in overtime when you start at the 25-yard line. It was abysmal to say the least, and Rula said that all week. It's like we just were not good enough in that game, and it showed. So there's a lot of spin zones with how you want to look at this game. Like I said, I think the best way I can spin zone it is you lose now and you figure out what your team is after this game or after this loss. Is how do you regroup? How do your guys kind of get over the loss hangover 24 hours afterwards? Because Rule usually gives them about a 24-hour period to kind of digest it, and then you get back to work. So how do you get those guys focused again And certainly, you look at the game this Saturday, which is also a game they absolutely should win and need to win at this rate now. But you go into a sleepy Purdue environment at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. So can you get over kind of that slog fest? And, it's just, there's just a lot of things that we can kind of delve into, but more on the defensive and special team side, because the offense, for the most part, outside of like the last couple of drives, did play a fairly well game. And I know we had talked about this, is Nebraska certainly loses that game 31-7 if you have the offense from last year. In this, Nebraska certainly does not have that a close game if you don't have Dylan or Jamal or Isaiah that entire game, because those dudes balled out, and those are the reason why you going out and got those dudes for your offense. And I'm happy that Isaiah and Jamal finally had the big games that we were always looking for, kind of the first 3 games. The UTEP game was probably their biggest games, but then Colorado and Northern Iowa, they were kind of like hush-hush. But then they came out against Illinois and just really, they showed why we got them. And Nebraska also needs to run the ball better. I don't think that's any apparent lacking of what we don't know. Is they certainly need to be better at running the ball. And we might take if they're going to continue to run the ball as they have been, you might take a playbook like a page out of Illinois' playbook, where you run or like you pass to set up the run going forward. We certainly know that through 4 games, they can pass the ball, and Dylan can just let Dylan do Dylan things, and you can pass the ball and you can set up your offense creatively like that. But if you can't get the run game going, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on a guy that's only played 4 collegiate games in his career. And it certainly showed in overtime that the moment might have been a little too big for him at that point. I know that second to last drive or whatever, where he fumbled the ball twice. Nebraska was lucky to bounce on it enough, but you go from a drive that you go down to try to take the lead and get points, and Dylan fumbles it twice, dropping back. So he did kind of show those freshman moments that maybe the pressure got a little too big at the end of the game when you put all that pressure on him to try to win the game, because you can't really run the ball at that moment in time. So the offense is certainly not perfect by any means, but it is definitely better than what we've seen before. And it's certainly something that we can rely on to score us points going forward. It's now that we have seen them kind of play a full 4 quarters, and I know that what we had said that last week is, what do they look like when they play 4 quarters? Now, can you clean up that second phase, like the second phase of the game, where you are playing the 3rd and 4th quarter and you're tired and you're down and you're going to drive to need points to win the game? Now you've seen that once. Can they correct those mistakes that did happen in those moments and make them better going forward? And then on the defensive side, you just have to be better all around. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And you can, losing Tommy Hill definitely does not help at all. And he might be out for Purdue too. You might not need him for Purdue, but doesn't hurt to have him in there at the same time if you can have him. But you might not be without him on Saturday. But I mean, flat out, the defense needs to be better. There were a lot of leaky yardages again, missed tackles, and we got no pressure on Altmaier whatsoever. He looked comfortable back there, and credit to Illinois again. I mean, that was designed for have him to roll out, play action, and get quick passes out, so we don't have time to get to the quarterback. Now, if you're Tony White, how do you adjust for that? Do you not rush as much and you play more coverage? Do you allow for those rollouts? Or do you just try to put more pressure and get to him quickly? It'll be very interesting to see, how Tony and the defense come out on Saturday against Purdue, who is not that good at throwing the ball. They're definitely a running team. And Purdue's not like something lightly to take either, because Maccabee ran for, 175 against us 2 years ago. And that weird night game where it was back and forth shootout for some reason with Casey Thompson. So, but we have seen what Maccabee can do at running back. And the way that Illinois ran the ball against us on Friday, it's, a little worrisome right now. Are we able to defend that type thing? So I don't even know if I want to get into special teams. I'll kind of let you guys delve into your thoughts before we figure out that we no longer can kick the ball anymore.
I think you just touched on special teams, though, Andy. I mean, that's good.
yeah, but I don't wanna because we shouldn't kick the ball anymore at this rate.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to say. I don't know. I'm not terribly worried. I will stand on my soapbox and say that the refs were a little sus. That's as much as I'm going to say on it. But even despite that, Nebraska was still very much in position to win that game. I mean, we had the, 2 opportunities at the end in the fourth quarter on the touchdown that Dylan just overthrew by a bit, and then we, like you said, at some point we got to find someone who can make a field goal from like 35, 40 yards.
Yeah.
And
that play call, I would run that again 10 out of 10 times if he had to do it again. That was a great play call by Sats. Dylan just missed the throw.
Yep.
Because, I mean, that entire drive leading up to that point was we were starting to run the ball well. And Dondell was actually getting, 4 to 5 yards of carry. And we were killing the clock driving the ball. And then, it was like 3rd and 3, and you're like, I formation, we're just going to run it up the middle again. And then you have the leaky tight end that Illinois didn't see coming. So it was a very good play call. Dylan just missed the throw, unfortunately.
Executed.
Right.
I mean, even after all of that, the defense held them at the end of the fourth quarter too at midfield. So it's like they were in great position to put that away. They didn't because of a few mistakes here and there down the way. I don't know. My takeaway is they're at least fixable mistakes. Little Dylan kind of miscues and freshman mistakes are going to happen, and it's just going to get better with time. The defense is a little worrisome, but I think losing Tommy Hill early really kind of threw things off.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we ever recovered from that. And I think part of it too, I don't think Illinois is a great team, but I think their offense is solid.
I mean, definitely improved from last year.
Yeah, their defense probably a little shakier, but their offense, I think, is good. And like you said, they knew kind of what the defense looked like going into the game. At least the quarterback did. They have their kind of 2 receivers and their.
I mean, those guys are studs. They were studs.
They came in. They knew what they wanted to do in their game plan. They executed it well. And to some extent, you do have to just kind of give credit to the other offense. But yeah, the defense, I don't know. Seems like they might just need a good yelling to in the locker room after that game, and then get back on the field for the practice this week. It is good that we're going into Purdue on Saturday. That should hopefully be more of a tune-up type game. Obviously, any Big Ten game you don't want to look over, but I think the spread's at like 10, right? Or we're favored by 10 points right now.
Right.
So
yep.
Shouldn't be as close of a game as this one. It's promising. It sucks for lack of a better term to be that close,
right?
And know, like the potential's there, and just be a couple things here and there off. But
it sucks because the offense certainly had chances to win that game, and you have a chance to finally win and get over those close demon 1-loss games. You finally have a chance to win an overtime game for the first time since 2014, and you don't. And there's a drive chart somewhere that I found on Twitter that since that Nebraska's win in 2014 against Iowa, that overtime win, which was Bo's last game, evidently, that Nebraska in overtime games since have not scored points in every overtime game they've played in. They just get to overtime. Not even points. They haven't had a single first down at any of their offensive possessions in overtime since 2014.
From the games I remember, they've looked frazzled.
Tragic. Yeah.
Because I think Miami, Wisconsin.
The Wisconsin one was super noticeable because that was that pass interference that wasn't called, but definitely PI. But either way, I mean, it's just it's one of those that's you finally have a chance to hit a ranked team at home on a 400 sellout. You finally get over the overtime slump, the one score games that you never are accustomed to winning, and then it's just you fold, in lack of a better term, essentially. So, And again, none of that is obviously Rule's fault, besides the games last year. But it's another one-loss game for Rule, and again, there were some questionable clock management decisions there at the same time. The challenge that was certainly not challenge worthy to save you like 4 yards was kind of bizarre too. But then the timeouts at the end when Illinois was like driving, you're like, don't you want the clock to kind of run out? But knowing what we know at overtime, maybe he wasn't trying to play for overtime either, knowing that we couldn't do it. But still something I'm sus about with his clock management going forward. But jury's still out to see if it's just weird timing or if it's like a trend that we're going to start seeing pretty soon. But yeah, Zach, your thoughts there?
I mean, you guys kind of summed it up pretty good.
Talk about special teams for us.
No, I think we'll get there. But to me, this one kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Andy, is teams from the past, in the past 3-4 years, wouldn't have kept it this close. And yeah, the overtime snafu, if you will, it is just part of who we are as a team. I think that was the best 4 quarters I've seen the Huskers play personally. I mean, in terms of like close game, obviously I've seen the first 3 games. Those 4 quarters were great because we were winning. But like this one was the best 4-quarter full game I saw up until that very last 2.5, 3 minutes, probably, maybe if not a little bit more. To that point, though, I mean, Illinois definitely, I think, deserves to be ranked at this point, and I think I don't want to say that we overlooked them. That's probably not the right way to put it, but it did seem like the way that the defense had been playing. Colorado, they were fired up. Obviously, I felt like that one was like a personal game. UNI, it seemed like they had like stepped off the gas, which was, I don't think that was the case. It just seemed like UNI maybe found like our number and was able to expose some things. You would think that that'd be enough to where, Illinois saw that too. They game planned for it. And that was the other thing, is Illinois just executed a really good game plan. At this point, though, like I feel really confident in the team going forward, because to that same point that we've already talked about too, or that you guys talked about, is that, how do you respond to this? And I know I've said this to you guys in like our group chats and stuff. It's like, how does the team respond? And I know that like any Big Ten game, especially now, you don't get the opportunity, if you're Nebraska, to look over those teams and say, oh, like we've got that one in the bag, which it kind of felt like we did with Illinois. It's like, oh, we will be able to get them. And then we didn't. Like Illinois, I think, just showed up ready to smack us in the mouth, which again sucks, but is also kind of good. We got it way out of the way early. Now, how do we respond with Purdue on a game that we should win, are favored currently by 10, which again is wild to me, just because I don't think Nebraska personally deserves to have a spread like that unless it's like a UNI, and not to discredit them. They played us really well too. It's just that talent level. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with a -10 or a 10-point spread favorite, but regardless, this is the game where for me, and I guess we can just go into this too, because special teams was such a shit show. I don't even know if we really even need to talk about it. It's bad.
Like Nate said, you got 4 downs now.
It's just bad. And I mean, to that point,
I forgot
John, what's his name, has been announced as the starter. So
John Hull, yeah.
Hull.
Avano. Well, I don't actually know if it's pronounced like that, but it might be Hall. But either way, Avano, it sounds like might be out for a couple more weeks. What Rule said tonight on his radio show. And I also forgot for the defense that they had those 4 personal foul penalties to Illinois. So, I mean, I think the stat was like they gave Illinois 60 yards on defense.
Which obviously doesn't help.
Which just of personal fouls themselves. So, yeah. I mean, and one of those was, I think the 3rd or 4th down play that he certainly looked like he was stopped, but then MJ Sherman just going in there punching for no reason.
Which he was trying to, like, if you look at it, he was trying to punch the ball out, but it definitely looked like a legit flag. And the worst part is to Nate's point earlier too, it's like, I'm not going to be the guy personally that's going to be like, oh, the refs had it out for us. But there were some questionable calls.
Yeah.
To the point they missed some on Nebraska for Illinois too, but it was just very one-sided. And the personal fouls, well, there was holding. There was a couple times I remember seeing their offensive line straight up almost tackle one of our guys. And I'm like, look,
Oh yeah.
I get it. I'm fine. Like you go back and look at the penalties that Nebraska got. I really can't argue against most of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can be like, yeah, I get why that was called, and I get why, the refs are human. I understand that's going to happen. But I don't even think, did Illinois have a single holding call? I think they might have had one. They had 3 penalties total, and they might have had 1 holding. And I'm just saying, like, when even I can see it on TV as obvious as plain as day, where it's like, that's a hold. And they're calling 4 or 5 on us or whatever. It's, I don't want to get too deep into that. I'm not saying that the refs had it out for us by any means, but it just
no call on the late hit out of bounds in overtime. A little sauce.
Yeah,
it was a little. There was a lot of questionable stuff going on there. Not a lot. There were just questionable calls, but that is what it is. I mean, that's football. Sometimes it happens. And the other thing with that is good teams still find a way to win, even in those moments. And I think Nebraska was close. I think that's the thing that I think that's the thing that I took from it the most is that Nebraska in previous years under those circumstances would not have been in the position to almost win like they were. We saw a Nebraska team that regardless of how stupid some of the penalties they did, still put up a heck of a fight and still worked to try and win the game. Did they? No. But I think now we have we now know like, okay, that definitely needs to be worked on. Pass rush defense absolutely needs to be worked on. Maybe close up, maybe put a spy or something in the middle so that way they don't just dink and dunk us in the middle. Regardless, I think a lot of good can come out of this game. To my original point that I have strayed so far from at this point, though, is how do they respond against Purdue? And to me, I don't think this is my actual goal of like, do I think they respond well? But if this is a game that Nebraska is supposed to win by like 10 points, according to Vegas, in my head, they need to hang like 40 on them. Mm-hmm. As in just not just go out and show that you can win, show that you can win handedly and that you fixed what you did last week. Get that confidence built back up. Like, hey, we lost last week. That's over and done with. We're moving on to Purdue, which I'm sure the players have. But I want to see a straight up brawl. I want to see Nebraska come out and just basically push them into the dirt. And I mean, I think they have the talent, and as long as they have the mentality, I think they can do it. It's just this is also our first traveling game, which is shocking to me. We had 4 home games in a row. That's wild. But yeah, and I'm not talking about special teams anymore. I'm not doing that.
It's like Nate said, you got 4 downs now. You got 4 downs. That's about it.
I will say one other thing that I thought, even though our defense didn't play great, there were a couple times where they came up with the key plays they needed to get us the ball back. Right. So even when
we still won the turnover battle.
Yeah,
all things considered.
And even when the defense still didn't play to the level that probably Tony White and all of them are expecting to play, there were still plays that they made to keep us in the game. So it's not like the defense had a horrible game. They were just the weaker. Well, not counting special teams, they were just the weaker unit.
Yeah. And like Buschini still had a good game, but there's a certain point where you outkick your coverage and to the wrong side of the field that allowed them for that punt return because he kicked it to like the 6-yard line, and then they had like a 40-yard return because he kicked it to the other side of the field where his coverage wasn't.
But he got the tackle.
But and that's why he got the tackle because everybody else was running behind him.
God, I don't understand how it feels like only Nebraska can pull stuff like that off. I just don't get it, man.
Because I looked at him like, oh, that's a hell of a punt. Like, good job. And I go, oh, nobody's over there.
That was the worst part is like on TV because it's from the side, it looks like a really good punt. And then all of a sudden you see him return it half the distance. And it's just like oh,
nobody's there.
Because it was to the wrong damn side. Go figure.
But Purdue, 11 a.m. on the old cock there. So if you don't have the old cock,
that is Peacock for those that are unaware.
No, it's the cock.
Peacock for Purdue.
Yes, Peacock.
Oh, real quick, since we're talking about Purdue, who wins in a fist fight, Lil Red or Purdue Pete?
Purdue Pete, he's got a hammer.
I said fist fight. He has to put the hammer down.
Oh, well, either way.
Not like literally, but I mean.
I mean,
he could not have the hammer.
I feel like if you you square up and you look him in the eyes, you're gonna see something dark. And it's
Yeah.
gonna be over.
Yeah,
And
but Little
might
Red's
de-
dead behind the
He
eyes.
might
He has
be
nothing.
de-inflate. Well, all Purdue Pete needs to do is grab something sharp on his hands, and then, like, if he has long fingernails, Little Red ain't surviving a pokey stab.
I'm just saying in the fairness here, like we're putting them in equal footing. Like, hey, there's a fist fight that's going to happen between you two.
In a world where we can't pop Little Red.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously he would win. Purdue Pete will, because he's like a ceramic person, like he's a ceramic being.
He's a person
whatever.
with a ceramic head, yes.
Yes, like obviously all you have to do is put that head down and bowl right into Little Red and you'll pop him. But my point being,
in an ideal world, Little Red loses the fist fight to Purdue Pete, and then Blonde Herbie comes in with the chair over the back.
maybe that's the more fair one. I do think I think old school Herbie would absolutely bury Purdue Pete.
Probably.
And with that, we're gonna get into our score predictions. Just kidding. Well, we will, but
we will. But what we need to see Saturday, I think, first and foremost, is how like you said, Zach, how the defense responds, and can Nebraska run the ball? I think this game sets up nicely to where Purdue is not that good of a defense on passing or rushing. So I think if this is your time to try to establish a dominant run game and a dominant running back type of game, I think this is the game Nebraska needs to do it in, just to instill some confidence back in that offense that they could run the ball again. And because we know through 4 games that we know what the passing offense looks like with Dylan and the receivers. We know what that looks like. But the running game just hasn't been there since Colorado. And I know Emmett ripped off that one against Northern Iowa, but it's not like they were, pounding the ball for 6-7 yards a carry against Northern Iowa. I mean, Dylan threw 3 touchdowns that game too. So it starts with having to establish the run again. And Rule says he wants to have a running back carry the ball 15, 20 times a game. Okay, this might be the game that you decide to do that and see who your dominant running back is. Is it going to be Dowdell? Are you going to stick with Emmett? Or are you going to stick with Ramir? And where does Gabe fit in that picture, if he does fit in that picture at all going forward? And if we remember, Gabe was the one that scored the first 2 touchdowns against UTEP running the ball, and we haven't really seen him since. So that's what I want to see out of the offense this week, is how they run the ball. Because it's not going to get easier as the season goes on. And Indiana certainly looks more like a formidable opponent. They certainly might be undefeated by the time we go to Indiana, just based on how their schedule sets up for them. Rutgers is still so-so. They weren't, I think, as good as they were kind of hyped up in the offseason, but it's still a weird Rutgers team. That the last time we played them was that weird Friday night game where I think we won 14-13 or something like that. So this is the type of game where it's going to be a sleepy Purdue environment on 11 a.m. and Nebraska just needs to run the ball and run them out of the building. Because we know what we get with Dylan in the passing offense, but can we sustain drives of running the ball going forward? Because against Illinois, we certainly did not, up until that kind of last drive where we didn't convert on anything for the special teams blunder. But that's what I want to see, is how they run the ball, because we need to run the ball. You can't keep going on relying on Dylan. I mean, you can, but I think if you keep trying to do that the rest of the season, it's only going to end up not so good for us. So it's not even that to take it off Dylan, it is. It's to take the pressure off Dylan and having to not rely on him so much to win you the games on offense anymore. Because certainly if you can run the ball, it's like, what are you going to do as a defense trying to scheme against Nebraska? knowing like, oh, they can now run the ball suddenly. So do we plan to play Dylan? Do we plan to play the running backs? And it might be a game by game basis where Rule does the same thing again, is where you pass to set up the run instead of run to set up the pass. So that's what I want to see. And then obviously, yeah, the defense just needs to have a better game in general. They need to be better and kind of all aspects of stopping the run and stopping the pass. There's not like one thing that they need to be better at. They just need to be better overall. This game.
Yeah, I think I agree with those sentiments too. You get the run game going. We got the passing game pretty well humming for the most part. You seems like Dowdell's kind of the hot hand they're riding, but again, you said Gabe Irvin had the first 2 touchdowns against UTEP. And
we haven't seen him since.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know. It's interesting because we do have a lot of. I mean, we have Emmett, we have Vermeer, we have Dowdell, and we have Gabe, all good in their own right. And there's only so much playing time. So,
and Emmett didn't have a single touch that entire Illinois game because Dowdell had 20 carries, Vermeer had 4, and Vermeer was mostly a passing back when he was in, anyways. But then, yeah, that was it. Outside of I don't remember Isaiah's one run, whenever that was, but Dowdell was obviously the clear back in that game. But we know that Emmett has speed. We know that Vermeer can, but they certainly love to use Vermeer as more of a passing back than they do as an actual running back right now. But yeah, can you find a way to get that running back room integrated into a smooth offensive flow to where no matter who you put in, you know that they're going to get yards no matter what type of play call or what type of offense you want to run with that back end. So, but yeah, it's clear that Dante has, the clear number one status is, can you keep feeding him the ball? And you look at the stats, 20 carries for 72 yards, but averaging about 3.6 yards a carry. So it's not like spectacular. You want to see him averaging, 5-6 yards a carry. So then that's a first down every other play, essentially, at that rate. So that's what they need. Yeah, like you said, that's what they need to step up on.
Does that mean it's my turn?
Yeah, unless Nate wants, I kind of also cut Nate off there at the same time, but unless they wanted to finish it.
Anything too big other than defense needs the defense again. I don't know. They seemed a little sluggish the past couple weeks, and I mean, I don't know. Purdue's a good game to try and rebound. So go in there, take care of business. It's kind of my keys to the game there.
Right, I'm just gonna say kind of like, I kind of already
kick all the field goals.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Well, okay. So I guess technically you could say two keys to the game, but this one is definitely like way more hopeful than I think it needs to be. But it would be nice to actually get like a field goal under our belt, just to be like, okay, we know he can make it. We know that Ball, how you say his name. We know he can make whatever. We know he can make it.
Whichever one of those combinations.
Yeah. We know he can make it. Well, I'm saying that's what he needs, is like that ability to say, okay, I can make it. I don't want that to be the first play of the game, but I think my overall is just respond. Or the coaches have to know at this point. The players probably know where they failed last week against Illinois. And not only that, they got probably an extra day of rest, so use it, and hopefully they learned from it to the sense of now go out and execute as you had the first 3 games before. Better than that, even, like, go and, show us as fans that you took the loss more personally than we did as fans. Go prove that you can respond as needed. And in my case, like I said, hang 30 on them. Just go out and ball out on both sides.
My thing that I am very intrigued to see is if they get in that situation again, whether it's in late in the game or early in the game, kind of they did at the end of the Illinois game, where you have maybe a 3rd and manageable or a 3rd and like 7, 3rd and 8 at like, the 35, 40 yard line, or maybe the 30 yard line, is one, how aggressive they are on that 3rd down play to get the first down? And if they don't get it, what do they do on fourth down? When you are in field goal range for most kickers, but if they're not going to kick it, how aggressive they are they going to be on a third down play, or if they go for it on a fourth down play, or it's going to be very interesting in that part of the field where you are in field goal range, and it's like a third and long. Are you going to try to just get close enough to not get the first down, but get in field goal range? So you go on forward on fourth down, or are you comfortable trying to kick it again type thing? So just seeing how they're going to try to manage that situation again, whether it's late in the game or early in the game, and how aggressive they're going to be. Because we knew at some point they were going to have a close game where you rely on the kickers, and they're 0 for 1 right now on having successful situations like that. So, like Nate's point, they might just be fourth down, 4 play all the time aggression going forward until they're proven wrong by their kickers. So,
although I will say, if they do decide to kick it, maybe turn the laces out.
Yeah, that was also that still frame hurt to look at. Laces in too. But
that's the other thing. Like, I hope special teams really practice this week to make sure they got their stuff figured out.
So that's going to be the interesting thing, is how aggressive Sats and Rule are in that part of the field. Knowing and just how confident. I mean, that sequence, whether they kick it or go for it, will kind of tell us how confident Rule is in the kicking when we get to that point of the game, if we do. I'm kind of wishing for it just because I want to see what actually does happen and what the coaching staff decides to do in that situation. So
this is also that type of game where if Nebraska comes out on both sides of the ball, offense, defensively, and puts themselves up in a way, then
we're back.
Well, that, but also like we start putting in like our players that might not necessarily get all the way through fourth down or third down. And then that's when you put in the kicker and say, all right, go make a field goal. You can do it. Go make it. Like, do it in a lower pressure situation where he can get the rhythm. He can do it in an actual game. And then, when you have to play in front of 90,000 Nebraska fans that are screaming at you, make it, then you can do it.
Right. All right. Prediction time, boys. Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
So
if you guys haven't, I got mine figured out a while ago. So I'll go if you guys are still thinking. So
I'm still thinking.
Even though I said I don't think Nebraska deserves a 10-point spread, I do think this is the game that they respond, but I don't think I'm not convinced of myself. I really hope I'm wrong on this prediction, but I'm not quite convinced that Nebraska is going to respond as I hope, with putting up 30 or 40 points on them. So I'm going to say that they're going to come back. Nebraska's going to score well, and it's going to be 35-24 Nebraska.
Okay.
So they will cover, but they're not going to do they're not going to do my cover.
Just enough to cover.
Yep.
I will go with 35-21. So more than cover, but we're not relying on field goals this game.
5 touchdowns, baby.
5 touchdowns.
I'm going a little more optimistic. I'm going to say 42-20. I think they'll stick with this in the run game for the first quarter and a half, and then we'll outpace them, I think, by early third quarter.
All right. With that, like I mentioned before, this Saturday, first road game, first 11 a.m. game for the season on all fronts on Peacock. So if you don't have that, either find someone with it and mooch off them, or pay for it yourself. So it's the only way you're watching the game.
Or we don't condone a specific word that starts with P and ends with iricy, but you can sail the high seas too. I'm not going to tell you where, but that is a thing you can do.
There are some reputable sites out there that we frequent from time to time for certain,
you may have
games.
to click through like 80 ads, but
you'll get it.
You'll get there.
You'll get there.
Just don't check ESPN on your phone. You'll be like 2 minutes behind, but that's okay.
Yeah, don't do that.
You'll still get to see the game.
But
or you can fly to Indiana.
Or you can fly to West Lafayette and go watch the game yourself. But yeah, with that, like I had mentioned before, the big primetime game this week will be Georgia, Alabama for sure. And then seeing Illinois go to Happy Valley or Death Valley, I should say. Happy Valley, either or. I think it's Happy Valley. Happy Valley.
Yeah, Death Valley's LSU.
Yeah, that's also a primetime 6:30 on NBC. Illinois, Penn State. So that will be a quite a good matchup to see. Is Illinois for real and is Penn State for real? At the same time, they had that kind of scare against Bowling Green. So interested to see kind of that matchup with that. In terms of your top 25 games, those are probably the two biggest ones. Notre Dame, Louisville might be really interesting too. Depending on, I guess, which version of Notre Dame comes out. The one that got upset or the one that boat raced Purdue. Either is possible. And then, like we had mentioned before, by the time this airs, the Thursday night game will already happen. So either the Giants are trash or the Giants are good. And that the Cowboys are trash or the Cowboys are good.
That's what we're going to take from that game? I don't think that game's going to give us anything of those.
No, Zach, you don't know ball then.
I mean, that's 100% fair. I don't know ball,
but then this Sunday night game, we also have two Monday night games, but the Sunday night game, Ravens Bills, your two Monday night games, the Titans and Dolphins. Ugh. Or the Seahawks and Lions.
That's at least a redeeming one.
But Will Levis in the whatever he's gonna do against the dying Dolphins, beautiful. I hope Joe. There's no way Joe Buck's on that call. If they sent him to that game, ESPN did something wrong.
Joe Buck just quits at halftime, just like, I'm out.
But then I think the big noon game for this coming slate is obviously going to be Packers Vikings. Just depends on what the Packers, if they trot out one-legged Jordan Love or Malik Willis. So depends on what the Packers want to do. I don't know what they will do. I guess we'll find out.
Is there a real chance that
probably not
Jordan Love would come back?
That's possible. He almost did last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of depends, but those are your big matchups this weekend for both college and NFL. And obviously, like I said, Nebraska visits the nightmarish Purdue, Pete's, whatever you want to call them, Saturday at 11 a.m. So for that, any last thoughts, guys? Obviously, Skurs by 90s always, but
oh sure, okay. Let's just take it away from one of us. See how it is.
Eagles by 90. I don't know.
Sure, I'll take that. I was actually gonna say trains down. So.
Oh yes,
but this is not a train. So.
Derail the trains.
Now we're gonna get
trains
because I'm doing this. Now Texas Network or whatever is gonna come take our podcast off
our sponsorship. Oh no, whatever will we do?
No, not the sponsorship. They're just gonna copyright this. We don't like that. Bring it on.
All right. With that, I am Andy, your host. That is Zach and Nate, and we are your source for sports.